Welcome to the DRS Train podcast. This service is the Red Bull Civil War. I'm your driver, Peter Brook, and your conductors today are Nav F1 and returning guest, the casual F1 fan. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hi, Peter. It's always fun when there's more drama off track than on track.
Hey guys, thanks for having me on. Let's talk about Red Bull, Christian Horner, and the entire Civil War.
So yeah, as Nav mentioned there, 2024 hasn't started brilliantly in terms of on-track action and the racing, but we do seem to have had quite a lot of controversy off-track. This situation involving Christian Horner and Red Bull, it seems to have evolved from merely a sort of dispute over possible workplace hostile work environment or sexual harassment into what appears to be some kind of power struggle between himself, Helmut Marko, and Jos Verstappen. It's kind of hard to know what to make of it, but I suppose I'm just left wondering who it was that kind of made up all of this in the end, if it didn't come from this woman that he's supposed to have been unfaithful with.
So, the whole thing, it's been a bit of a mess, isn't it? It all, again, just recapping what you said, it started with Horner being investigated for cross-border behavior. I actually had to search what that means after working in corporate for so many years that it's a surprise I don't even know that term. So it started from there. Right now, where we are, it's basically a political battle. And honestly, it's been a poorly managed, I think, hit job against Christian Horner. That's how it all started. Right now, we don't know where we are when it comes to the entire thing and who comes out on top. But I think one thing is for sure, it does appear that the the drive to win and to dominate in Formula One, right now it has taken a backseat when it comes to the entire saga. Red Bull's focus seems to be on who comes out on top, be it one faction or the other, and sooner rather than later, it's going to have an impact on the team.
Yeah, I think when you're considering all those Red Bull power struggles, it's important to just clarify where the power is because even when I started watching Formula One, it was very unclear where Helmut Marko stood and what his role was. So maybe Peter, just give us a clear overview of how Helmut Marko came into the fray. What does he do when Horner comes into this? Because we hear all those names, right? But I feel like Sky Sports and all those different medias, they're not always the best at just making it clear who is where in Red Bull.
So Helmut Marko, he was appointed head of the Red Bull Junior team when it was created in 2001. Before that, he was a driver originally in the 60s and 70s. He's Austrian, so he was originally part of a sort of Austrian clique that you had with Niki Lauda, Helmut Koenig, and a few others from that era. And then he went into team management, and he was running what was called the Red Bull Junior team, was actually a Formula 3 team in the 90s, and then he knew Dietrich Mateschitz, and so they created this actual driver development program, even though they didn't actually have their own Formula One team yet. So he's been running that since 2001. Red Bull have been a team since 2005, and since then he's basically been in charge of picking their juniors and who doesn't get on the junior team, and then he's the first voice to choose who gets promoted to either Red Bull or what is now RB, but what obviously most people just still think of as Toro Rosso. Um, so he was the one who obviously would have said, let's get Max on, because Max is a very interesting case because he was in his first year as single seaters, and then he got signed up to the junior team, and then only a week later got his seat confirmed with Toro Rosso for 2015. So this is all done very hastily, and obviously Max has been with the Red Bull family since then. So he said his loyalty is towards Helmut. Um, Helmut Marko, though, he's known for being quite tough and uncompromising. He's not very good at kind of giving people second chances. I mean, there have been over 100 drivers in the Red Bull Junior team since it formed, and most of them lasted less than a year. Um, these days, of course, he's getting older, and also because a couple of years ago, Dietrich Mateschitz died, who seems to be his biggest ally in the paddock, and so now he's just being seen as increasingly irrelevant. And he keeps saying things such as his scandal about, saying that basically saying, oh, Checo's not as good as Max because he's Latin American and stuff like that. So this is leading people to believe that obviously something has gone down between him and Christian, because the current consensus on everything seems to be that this has been orchestrated either by him or by Jos Verstappen. as a way of kicking Christian out of the team. Um, and it throws things up in the air a bit because Max has said his loyalty is to Helmut, and so it just you're left wondering, well, what's going to happen if he gets fired? Is Max going to go as well, or are they just going to get rid of Christian? But then maybe that's the glue that holds the team together, and they all collapse. It's hard to say what's going to happen with that.
Yeah. Just to add one more thing, now that is the part where the team comes in. There's another corporate part of things. Until this season, there aren't that many who are actually aware that there's a Thai owner for Red Bull GmbH. So this is something that came into the picture when the entire Horner scandal has actually broken out. So just to make things clear, how the Thai owner ended up having 51% share compared to the Austrian side having 49% share. So when Dietrich went to Thailand and ultimately struck a deal with I forget his name, Yuvidha something is the man's name.
Yuvidya is his surname.
Yeah,
Yuvidya. I
Yuvidya.
can't remember his first name.
Yeah, Yuvidya, and he struck a deal with the Thai owner, and both of them had 49% of the share, and the Thai owner's son had 2% of the share at the time. It was just as an inheritance or something that he was given. So what has happened is that the original Thai owner he lost his life. I don't know. It's been a while. At that point in time, the current Thai owner, he's actually the son of the original founder. So he ended up inheriting the 49% share of his father and the 2% share that he was given as an inheritance. So that has ultimately led to him having 51% share, while the Austrian side has 49% of the share. Now, none of this was an issue when Dietrich was alive, because mostly what had happened at that point in time was that he was the one who was handling the business part of it. So when that is done, ultimately, sorry, once again. So when that happens, so when ultimately Dietrich lost his life, that is the time when the entire Austrian side of things, it has kind of collapsed. It has broken up into three parts. There are three different chief executive officers. The one that we tend to hear, Oliver Minchloff, he is the CEO, and he is the one who's actually handling the entire thing. He's the boss of both Horner and Marco on the Austrian side. But at the same point in time, Yuvidhya is also the boss for Horner, not for Marco. So that's why the split has happened right now. And that is where the things stand in terms of the corporate battle.
Yeah, it's all very complicated, really, because before this I wasn't aware that the actual Thai side was directly involved because I know that Red Bull Racing obviously is owned by the larger Red Bull company, the energy drink company. Because this is the other thing about the history of it is that it's not really its own patent or design. Is that the Red Bull energy drink is just the Austrian version of what was originally a Thai energy drink called Krating Daeng that this Yovidia man had founded, and so Dietrich was the one who basically said, "Oh, I want to make a Western version of this and give it, this name Red Bull because Krating Daeng means Red Bull in Thai." Um, yeah, I wasn't aware that they actually they were still involved in that sense because it's quite multi-layered actually in terms of how everything operates at Red Bull because this is a slightly different topic. But in the past, when they had issues in 2007 about people saying that, oh, well, they're cheating because the Toro Rosso is the same car as the Red Bull car, and they've designed both of them, is that well, actually, no, Adrian Newey is employed by Red Bull Technologies, not Red Bull Racing. It's a third, so we've actually bought our cars from them. So these are not our cars at all. So that's fine. Eventually, they worked out how to get rid of that rule around 2010. But yeah, it's compared to the others, something like Haas or Alpine, which are just it's just the team basically, and there's the shareholders.
Yeah.
There's a lot of other stuff going on, and it's quite a complex hierarchy.
Yeah, and the man who really shines in this hierarchy every single time is Christian Horner, who many people kind of thought owned Red Bull for a while because he was always the one just talking to the media. And we recently discovered that he made an attempt to buy Red Bull, and that might also have played into the power struggle. So at least he tried to lead a consortium to make a move. Do you think that has played a big role into it?
So I think just mentioning the source, I think it was Joe Savard. I think he was the one who actually mentioned this thing in his green notebook or something, a feature that he does. So according to him, what he said is that when Dietrich was no more, at that point in time, there was a certain power struggle there in the Austrian side of things, where there is probably a hint of interference that Horner did not have. So, just to prevent that, the aim was supposed to be that with the help of the Thai side of things, Horner ultimately separates this entire racing unit from the corporate structure so that he can run it and he can run it independently, just like he done when Dietrich was there. So when this thing came forward and the Austrians got to know about it, of course, when this happens, the Austrian side of it, they lose a lot of power, and evidently Marco also loses a lot of power within the team. So that has influenced in whatever has happened, according to Joe. Now, whether that is true or not, it's still speculation.
Yeah, there's a lot of speculation involved in all of this because if we just look at the start of the issue, the Horn allegation, it all went really quickly, didn't it? It started end of Jan or start of Feb, and I think that's when it really became a big topic. And then within a month, we're talking about Verstappen leaving. Those rumors at the start, they started from the Telegraph, and it's quite clear now, I think, that Jos had a play into this, right?
I think, again, we are all speculating. First of all, let's make that clear. We are not making any claims. We don't want any lawsuits coming our way. So,
Yeah.
entire speculation. Look, what has happened is, and there has been a clear pattern. And I've been a bit harsh on it on my Twitter as well, because I've started calling out this nonsense pieces. I think if you guys have checked out the recent piece from F1 Insider, they are claiming that U2 is writing a song in tribute of the lady who actually accused Christian Horner. That is actually these are the kind of reports that are being done right now. So the reason why the reason why Marco and Verstappen and Joss's name actually came into the fray was the two websites, rather the three websites that were at the forefront of reporting these things and how they were a bit conflicting. Now, on one side, we have Telegraph. Everyone knows Eric Van Haren is very close to the Verstappens. Again, it's a Dutch publication, but Eric is very close with Verstappen. On the other side, F1 Insider, whatever I've heard, there is a certain level of allegiance with Helmut Marko. Now, when you have these two websites that are actually at the forefront of all these things, again, there was, I think, Motorsport Total as well. There were a few reports from them. When these three websites were at the forefront of reporting everything, while the entire British media, which includes the race, Autosport, motorsport.com, and any other key journalist, when they kind of took a step back and did not report on it, it started appearing that things were a bit fishy. Again, the way Yoss has entered the fray, the way he kind of criticized Horner when things had started to calm down a bit. Then again, the alleged relation, again, we don't even know if there's truth to that. His relation with the accuser, if that played a role. And also, again, if on one side we have this, and on the other side we have the failed coup from Horner that has triggered Marco. You add all of this, you have a clusterfuck of a situation where we don't really know exactly the motives behind this happening. We just know why it is ultimately panning out this way right now.
Because I am getting from all of this is that people are onto Horner's case, like they don't want him there, or a lot of people don't want him there, and it's easy to see why. I mean, he's made a lot of enemies during his time in Formula One, and I feel like a lot of other people, external people to Red Bull, are trying to latch on to this because he is far from the most likable fella, that's for sure. But what
Yeah.
surprised me is he really hasn't had a lot of support from the rest of the paddock during all of this. And of course, there's an element of people not wanting to get involved in something that is hard to grasp even for insiders at the moment. But usually in those issues, you get a major part of the paddock trying to at least make public statements to say whatever happens, we're backing up, we're backing the colleague, and we're backing the longtime friend of the garage. And you didn't have that at all this time. They just wanted to leave it be, and even Um, even the drivers or even the engineers, usually you get some PR talk. There wasn't any PR
Well,
talk this time.
well, there were two drivers that have actually come out in support. Again, their voices have been a bit dampened. One was Daniel Ricciardo, the other was Sergio Perez. Now make of it what you want.
Yeah.
So those two have been very, again, maybe it's just cozying up to the boss, but yeah, there is, again, look, I am completely, I don't think any driver needs to actually come out and say something in this situation, because what if there is a scenario where it comes out that Christian was, what if he's actually guilty in the sexual harassment thing? We don't even know that. We have no proof whether the lady, I mean, we really don't have all the facts. So that's why everyone is, not even touching it with a 10 feet pole, because just keep distance from something as precarious as this one, and it's understandable.
Yeah, that's why I said usually I don't think that drivers should say anything or that a team should side with another in those issues. But usually, what I have seen is you do get that happening. I don't know if it's a matter of etiquette or a matter of camaraderie, but you see that
Yeah.
happening. And your second point on Daniel Ricciardo, it's really funny how, for once, Drive to Survive has had events that are really helping us understand what's gone on so far. So whether it's with Tsunoda getting into squabbles with everyone recently and being so temperamental, you see that through what was happening behind the scenes, Red Bull really wants to always put someone against him. And he is a benchmark, but is also the one who will be dismissed quicker out of the entire junior team if he doesn't deliver. But the second thing is we saw how much Horner loves Ricardo and how much Ricardo knows that any current career he has right now is thanks to Horner. So it's just mad to witness how close those two are. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see Daniel making more comments, because Horner could really be out of all of this very soon. And this leads us to talk about the next stage after all those allegations, which was the Google Drive, the after the affair, it was the Google Drive, all those fake pics, those genitals that turned out to be a finger, and it was really, really hard to see how it wasn't a finger. We don't know where the drive came from. We don't know who really just sent it everywhere. What we do know, and the only clear thing here, is that whoever made that drive had everyone's emails.
So, Peter, you want to go ahead?
Well, I suppose when you look at those WhatsApp files, my main takeaway from it is Christian Horner's crippling lack of riz. I mean, yeah, it's weird because obviously we had this investigation, and they're like, well, it was an internal investigation by Red Bull, and they cleared him of any wrongdoing, and then the next day suddenly this thing gets sent to literally every journalist in the paddock. So somebody who had access to their contact details and was able to send it anonymously, so nobody even knows who the whistleblower was. Um, it obviously now we actually had some hard evidence of what these allegations were, because before this it was a lot of kind of journalistic Twitter accounts that whose primary source tends to be trust me bro, saying oh so and so is going to be fired by the end of the week and all this is happening. It's like I don't know. And then we actually got this, and it's like, okay, well, and if this is fake, it's been faked very well. But yeah, Ricardo, he got in trouble because the drivers were all asked about this. I think most of them don't care at all, especially the ones that aren't involved with Red Bull. And because I think he basically called it smoke and mirrors or hot air or something, trying to dismiss it. And he gets in trouble because I think they think that he's dismissing allegations of misogyny and sexual assault. And it's like, no, okay, let's take a step back a second. If you take all the messages at face value, this isn't really a very convincing argument for like sexual assault or sexual harassment, because what it basically looks like is that Christian was having an affair with a female colleague, and a consensual affair at that. Um, it's a lot of just kind of low key flirting, mostly with her flirting back. There's a few moments where she seems to push back against it, and it looks like it ran on for basically most of 2023. And then by the end of the year, she basically said, no, we have to stop this because I feel bad for Jerry, and somebody who knew Jerry and probably saw her around the paddock and everything. And there are there are suggestions in the messages that, as well as flirting, they actually fooled around together as well. So Yeah, he's basically. I don't think it's. I don't think this is quite as simple as saying, "Oh, he's been, slapping his secretary on the arse or telling her to wear tighter clothing or something." It's like, no, no, he's been having an affair and a consensual affair, and that's how it looks at the moment.
Do you think those messages are real or not? Because the next issue is, and of course that's just people on the internet trying to speculate whether they think messages can be real, which that's up for
So the
detectives and lawyers to look at. But do you guys think those texts are even real? Because some of those, there are
I
a
doubt
lot
it.
of typos, there are a
Yeah.
lot of weird punctuation. It looks like someone just used one of those WhatsApp generators.
For me, the thing is, I think if it was faked and it was designed to sort of damage his credibility, it probably would have been a lot more explicit because the kind of flirting and the kind of language they use is very, very tame. Like, if someone was faking this and wanted to make it out that he was some kind of voracious predator or whatever, they would have made it it would have been way more blunt and explicit than it was. Um, but yeah, the spellings and stuff is all a bit funny. Some of the messages almost look a bit too formal as well. It's kind of hard to say, but that's a huge amount of effort if somebody has faked all of this. But
That's the
if
thing,
it's
as someone
real,
whose second language is English, this looks like, some of the messages or some of the phrase structures I would see from like my classmates when we would learn English. That's the thing. It looks like someone who doesn't speak English and is learning it and has a good level of it made them up, at least to me. And that's because if Christian Horner is writing English like that, there's a big issue because we have the team principal of one of the greatest
hmm,
teams of Formula One, who cannot spell. There was an obvious word, but yeah.
Yeah. So I think the main issue that comes up here is that I'm again I still not. I don't think I can commit that whether there is actually that those were actually real or not, because the thing is they have been checked or they have either been sent for review or whatever. But the problem is no one has until now, none of the media houses, because almost everyone got it, none of the media houses have actually said or have either confirmed the veracity of these chats. None of them have done that because there's apparently these softwares where you can actually construct the whole thing. There's one thing again. Also, I will. So I tried to go through the messages. They were too boring and too much. Too. It's very hard to keep track of whatever nonsense in terms of chat was going on. So I actually just asked the opinion of a few female friends what they thought of the whole thing, and again the response that I've got is it's been very mixed. There are quite a few that have dismissed it as saying that both of them, as there was an exchange of chats which meant that she was reciprocating to whatever he was saying, just like Peter said. However, there were a couple that said that in workplace maybe he's trying to assert his authority and she had nowhere to go. So yeah, it's a bit of a gray line. There are, however, two main things that tend to be forgotten in all of this. First is we don't know the entire chats, we only know a selected portion of it. What if this selected portion was picked up to make Horner look bad? We don't know if that is if that happened or not. Secondly, again, this was again written in Joe Savard's notebook. He mentioned that there were quite a few screenshots where you could see that Horner was online or he was typing, and it was at that point in time that the screenshots were taken. So again, he questioned that why was he taking screenshots while these conversations were happening? Weren't the screenshots supposed to be taken when in the aftermath when she was supposed to submit this evidence to someone? So again, two questions that we don't really have an answer for.
that's the thing people find kind of funny because towards the end of these conversations, if you look at them, if you can assume a chronological order, is that Christian. It sounds like when they called off this supposed affair, Christian then asked her to delete the conversations like two or three times, and she just doesn't. So unless she just kept it and screenshot everything at once, or had been the entire time this had been going on, which sounds like it'd been going on for at least 6 months, had been screenshotting it. But it is just the conversations are kind of funny because it's some bits are just boring, and because it's a mixture of flirting and like professional stuff. And because she'll be like, okay, so I rearranged your conference tomorrow for 5 p.m. and he's like, great, what are you wearing, kind of thing, and they'll just switch between that and everything. But yeah, it it is kind of bouncing back because it's not like, oh, he's making loads of unwanted advances and she clearly is not interested. Is this at points she has a change of heart, but a lot of it she's leading him on and she's playing along with it and flirting back. And again, it's implied that they fooled around on a plane in the Middle East as well and stuff like that. So it's hard to know what to make, especially because we don't even know who this woman is. Okay, so we know it's a female staff member at Red Bull. Assuming these are real, I imagine internally everyone knows who it
Yeah,
is, but the general public.
the again, I'd rather not name her or even it's in the public. Her identity is in the public now.
Oh, it is. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, because no question of who this is, what's her position and her sort of ranking in the hierarchy amongst the team, her age as well. That's another thing, because I think a lot of people are basically just they've decided that Christian is guilty because he's a man, he's older, and he's at the top of the team, so he must be in the wrong. And it's not quite it's not quite that simple.
Yeah.
What wasn't a good look, of course, was the fact that they decided to suspend this woman with full pay, and they did it on International Women's Day as well. So that didn't
So
that
I
that
mean,
rubbed a lot of people the wrong
expect
way. And yeah,
exactly expect RBR expect Red Bull to be a PR disaster. And the entire sequence of events has been poor, to be honest. And I don't know what kind of future does she even have in Red Bull if she's made a complaint that she's not comfortable with her boss apparently, and the complaint has been dismissed for whatever reason. Now either she's on the wrong, then there will be sanctions against her. Either she's on the right, and there has to be sanctions against Honor. When that is in either of those scenarios, I don't think she can be an employee in Red Bull Racing at least. Why is she even there? I don't get that.
yeah. I mean, the implication, because they said that when they suspended her, they did it because she's basically well. I think the way they phrased it was that her allegations weren't honest or something, which is another way of saying she's making everything up. Um, which it's possible. I mean, there is definitely that could certainly be a thing that it turns out, yeah, none of this is true and she's made it all up or whatever. What puzzles me is that we then started getting Jos Verstappen speaking out a lot and demanding that Christian has to go, and I was like, okay, now this is really fishy. I think he said he sympathised with her, and I was like, oh yes, Jos Verstappen, that great sympathiser of the plight of women. I mean,
Yeah.
it's that, and I'm thinking, okay, so it, if we assume that these screenshots are genuine and real, if it wasn't her, then did she send them to Jos and then he decided to leak it? Are they plotting together to get him out? I don't. It doesn't make any sense. And if Jos fabricated the WhatsApp message, you better believe they'd be more explicit as well.
And the thing is, I think Yos is also married, right? But I think he's
Probably.
married right now. I'm not sure, but I
Uh,
think he's married as well. So yeah,
he has been married in the past. I don't know if he's married again, but yeah, obviously everyone knows the. Was it? I can't remember if it was Max's mum that everything went down with, or someone else. But he's had a few. He's had several
there are
relationships. Let's
multiple.
say.
Yeah, and there have
Yeah.
been far too many cases against him of actually aggression against the other sex. There has been, look, I mean, if in all of the thing is at one point, I mean, at one point fans need to understand the whole thing from a perspective where they have to look at it from outside. On one side you have Honor. Again, I don't think he's the ideal man or the ideal person in any which way. I mean, if he's cheating on his wife, then again he has a track record of it, so he's not the ideal man. On the other side you have Marco and Jos Verstappen. They're actually trying to fight for the right of the woman when they're saying that, okay, yeah, whatever. In either of these cases, both of these people are not, you cannot be the team Horner or team Marco. You have to just stay out of it, and you actually have to call out the foolishness that is there, that is going on right now, because whatever is going to happen, this is killing the Red Bull, the kind of Red Bull dynamics that existed. Horner leaves, the team will not be the same. Max leaves, the team will not be the same, and that is the bottom line which no one wants to understand.
Yeah, from what I've seen, Jos has remarried a third time, and he has two kids with that third woman. So yeah, he left Sophie Kumpen, the Verstappen's famous
Max's
mom.
mother, yeah.
Yeah, Verstappen's mother. I feel like 12 years ago. Um, But yeah, no, I fully agree with Peter in terms of Jos is not the one who needs to start giving us lessons on how to treat women in the paddock, especially when obviously the way he treated Sophie is one thing, but also he hasn't been the nicest to most people in the paddock either. So he's not really a gentleman either. What I'm interested, what I'm interested in is more what happens with Jos. Why is he now this this huge power holder in the paddock when he is Verstappen's dad, yes, and he is the one who kind of made Max who he is. But
Yeah.
I'm a bit confused as to why he now is such an important player. How he goes from a guy who's sitting in a corner of the paddock because no one really wants him there to he might be the new agent and he might just get Max into a new team. It's all very weird to me, at least.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, he's one of the posse of kind of driver dads that get invited to races and hang around and that. I mean, he's kind of similar to Anthony Hamilton in that he has been Max's manager and has directed his career a lot, and also he has the fact that he's also an ex-driver, but he's not employed by Red Bull, as far as I know. He's there at the behest of or at the discretion of Max, just inviting him as each race because he's his dad. He doesn't hold an
Yeah.
official role within the team, but it doesn't mean that he doesn't have influence because this is the whole thing about Max having saying his allegiances to Helmut and obviously to his dad is that he's more likely to side with them apparently than he is with Christian, which is curious because you'd think his relationship with Christian would be closer because at the end of the day, Christian is the figurehead of the team. He's the real powerhouse behind making sure everything runs. Helmut is just there as well senior advisor. That's his official role. Aside from the Red Bull Junior team as a separate entity that he's the head of. Um, so it's like, okay, Helmut decided to give you that seat in 2014, but Christian is the one that runs the whole team and and him plus Adrian, who Adrian Newey has somehow dodged this completely. He's been very lucky that he's not involved at all in this kind of power struggle. But it's Max, Christian, Adrian, though that's the glue that holds the team together and has made it work so well.
Yeah.
He's so used to
Precisely.
working on split redesigns that he's just slipped out of the conversation.
Apparently, if you go by reports, he was going to Ferrari or Mercedes or Aston Martin. Again, rumors have been going in every which direction. Coming to Max, I think, look, Max is a very black and white kind of character, and I think that works for him most of the time. It's not working for him right now. He's made it very clear that his allegiances are with Marco and with Jos because, again, I think maybe it might be a cultural thing. Maybe Dutch and Austrians are a bit closer, but also it might be due to the fact that Marco was the first to identify him and gave him the opportunity very early. And he was the one who pushed for I think, the early promotion in Spain 2016. So those are the things that maybe Max remembers, and he tends to have an allegiance towards that. On the other side of it, it does appear that whatever Joss and Mark are going to do, Max is going to stick by the side. And that is ideally that's not the best way to go about things because you have to have more nuance. But that is how I think Max is approaching right now. I don't think he has a role in all of the stuff that has happened, but it's a bit like whatever my dad does and whatever Marco does, I'm with them. So yeah, that's where it stands.
And do you think that that stance would be moving to Mercedes, Aston Martin, or even another team? Because everyone just really cares about that now and what seats would open up, especially when, again, there were no moves at all going from the end of 2023 to the start of 2024. And all of a sudden, there might be like 8 or 9 transfers going on.
I do think it shows how fickle everyone is in Formula One because if there is anyone that has followed the 2021 F1 season, I think you could bet that if Jos Verstappen was in the paddock, he would have punched Toto Wolff across the face because of the kind of stuff that he had said about Max at the time. And even Helmut has kind of said quite a few times that Max will never go to Mercedes because a lot of stuff happened in 2021. But since then, the tone has changed, the allegiances have changed, and Jos has already had a very open public meeting with Toto in I think Bahrain, and it does appear that they will be fine with moving towards that team. Now, whether that is a smart decision or not, it's a very different debate. But the fact that they are willing to do something like this on the basis of what we don't really know, and that is a questionable choice, at least in my view.
Yeah, it just seems that I'd be surprised if Max does want to leave because it's like, why? What is your allegiance to Helmet strong enough that you would basically ruin what is a great thing at the moment? Because he knows any other team is going to be a huge downgrade. It's a very well-oiled machine. They have by far the best car. He has a very compliant teammate that doesn't make things too difficult for him. Um, and yeah, obviously there is a lot of moving around, but there aren't many good seats left now because Ferrari's locked up with Hamilton and Leclerc for next year. Um, Mercedes is an option, but Mercedes are not making themselves that they've portrayed themselves as basically incompetent since the return of ground effects in terms of both car design and just general management of the team and how they organize themselves. The latest rumor seems to have been Aston Martin, and people are pointing the fact that obviously because they're getting Honda engines in a couple of years, that's an option. It's like theoretically, yes. And I suppose that, fills out fantasies people have of Max driving alongside Fernando, assuming he's still racing in 2 years' time. Um, but it's when they keep hinting, oh, he's going to quit and leave the team. It's like, but why? You'd think at the end he would care first and foremost about having a good car over, wanting to buddy up with Helmet.
I
That's
mean,
what's mad
ideally,
to me
yeah,
at the
go ahead.
moment, how Max would leave and also how he would follow people. I mean, he is the fastest driver in Formula One right now by quite some margin. It just surprises me that he would follow people rather than people following him.
I mean, it's not, but the thing is, it's not a logical decision in any which way. I think everything that has happened, it is not logical in any which way, because they are cannibalizing their dominance in Formula One by focusing on something that might give them short term gain, but not the long term thing in any which way. I think if Max does make a decision like this and if he's willing to move, it's entirely because his father wants him to. And whatever you talk about, whatever accolades we give Jos Verstappen, he's not. When it comes to being impulsive, he's had quite a few fits of it, and I won't be surprised if tomorrow he comes up to Max and says that, okay, we are not driving for Red Bull anymore, and Max complies. I won't be surprised in any which way.
You would hope though that Max might be able to put his foot down a bit more at this
Yeah.
point. I mean, he's now what 27 years old. I mean, he's amassed millions. He's his own man. He doesn't have to listen to his dad on everything, and so it he yeah. You would hope he would stand up unless he's one of these ones that is just happy to that is able to put his trust in other people to do things for him, but. You'd wonder if he ever does want to do a Schumacher and try and build his own team, pick something useless like Alpine or Haas, and then bring in Newey and bring in everyone else and try and turn them around and make them decent. But for the time being, there's no. It's yeah, and unless that he has any reason to believe that by 2026 the cars are not going to be any good, there's no reason to leave.
Well, especially as he has some of the easiest opportunities ever to go five in a row, which only Schumacher has done, and importantly, Lewis didn't do. So I don't see why he would just give up on that opportunity. 2025 is there for him, waiting. And people who think Hamilton's going to challenge in 2025, unless the development has already started at Ferrari and they already got Adrian Newey to build a new car, there's absolutely no way Lewis moves into a new team, then beats Leclerc, who is very fast. People tend to forget, beats Leclerc and then challenges Max. So it would be a very big move to just be like, yeah, I don't want this fifth title. And it would be even funnier to have 2025 be a lineup of Sergio Perez and Yuki Tsunoda and somehow get Perez win the title by like 15 points over, well, Leclerc or someone, and then you would actually end up with Sergio as a world champion. It sounds mad to me that Verstappen would give up on all of this.
It's madness. Yeah, that's the right word. It's madness. And I think at this point in time, I think this just shows the arrogance of the entire situation, because I think what they are showing right now is something that Red Bull has not shown in the 20 years. Because Red Bull is one team that has always avoided these pitfalls. Red Bull learned from the mistake Williams made when it let Newey go in 96. And it has always held on to it. Red Bull knew that keeping the corporate pressure and the politics out of the sport is what is going to help them excel, and that is what they've done. And now you look at it, it's everything that is going in the wrong direction. And you have Max threatening to leave. Even Horner has actually, I think, he's tried to call his bluff, and he said that okay, at the end of the day, Max is part of the team, Marco is part of the team, but I lead the team. So none of them are actually backing down, and you really you really wonder what's going to be in the future.
And it's not fully the first time that there have been some controversy and struggles in terms of power at Red Bull. I think, Peter, you could remind us of what happened in 2014 when, when Mercedes took over and Red Bull started falling back in 2014 and 15, and they nearly lost Adrian Newey. And again, going back onto what Casual said, that was vital to keep Adrian there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, Adrian is kind of hot property. Everyone's always wanted him, and they. The thing is, it wasn't his fault. Is that this turn down in performance was because of the engines. The Renault power. I mean, the Renault have never really produced good engines. I mean, even though you go back decades, they pioneered turbo engines, but for a good 4 to 5 years, nobody dared touch them because theirs kept blowing up all the time. But yeah, during the Red Bull years, they were always down on power, so that in the Vettel years, he was always much weaker at places like Monza. But obviously, the car had such good aero that didn't matter. But by 2014, it did matter because the Mercedes power unit was so good. I mean, whether that's because they've been, first developing it 7 years earlier remains to be seen. Um, and so he probably was like, and so he was thinking, well, this performance is really bad. I mean, 2014, it was difficult because, they were now effectively third fastest and Vettel was getting beaten by Ricardo, and then he suddenly leaves them at the end of the year to move to Ferrari. But then 2015 was one of their worst years on record because they only got 2 podiums, I think. And again, it was like, well, the aero is fine. There's nothing wrong with that. It's just the engine's useless. And I think he's always been tempted by Mercedes and Ferrari. They've always wanted to drag him over, and this has been the latest thing, particularly after Hamilton signed for Ferrari. Everyone said, "Oh, Adrian's going to go there too," or they were saying he's going to drag Bono and half of the people over from Mercedes. I think they were trying to envision it like Schumacher in '96, moving to Ferrari, creating his dream team. And I don't think it's quite that simple, but the thing is, he's in the twilight of his career. I mean, he's in his 60s now. He has
Yeah.
noticeably taken a step back. He's not the one. He used to be the one chiefly in charge of car design, and now he more just kind of oversees it, and other people are involved. And he has his problem. I mean, he's got this RB17 that he's designing. It's a road car, although it's really annoying because there's an F1 car called the RB17. So whenever I
Yeah.
Google it, it comes up with that. And he said in his autobiography he wants to design like boats, like yachts, and like competitive yachts and speedboats and everything. So he's not so heavily involved. He's probably just going to retire in a couple of years while still at Red Bull.
Yeah. I think that was that was what I tweeted yesterday, and it pissed off quite a few people. Actually, a lot of things piss off quite a few people, and I wrote the same thing that that Newey is 65 right now, and at this age, expecting him to basically shift base from from I think he lives in Milton Keynes. I'm not entirely sure. From there to Maranello, and again, because I think Newey made it clear that if he has to move teams and change jobs, he wants to be hands on. He's not going to someone who'll do something that John Bernard did with Ferrari, that he'll work remotely from England and just and fax across everything to Maranello. He is not going to do that. And that is where the problem lies, because Ferrari is a high intensity and high commitment environment and job. Unless and until that can be sorted, I don't see Newey moving. And at 65 years of age, I don't think he is looking for any new challenges. He's achieved whatever he had to. And again, Ferrari, great, it has its prestige, but this is a bit too much for even him.
So in the end, do you guys think that all those talks between Jos and Toto, all the talks between Toto and recently there was Alonso's agent, Fabio Briatore, in Monaco, who is going to get that Merc seat? Because I feel like the conclusion to all of this becomes again this topic of Mercedes. I do not see Verstappen. If Verstappen is going to move in 25, it's only going to be Mercedes. He's not going to go to Aston. It would be such a step down. So if he ever goes to Aston, I feel it will be 26, maybe to replace Alonso. But I feel it's very important to just have an idea of what happens to that seat, because when there's Alonso and Verstappen basically maybe on the market, it closes the door to what we had said a few weeks ago about how Ocon could be considering, how Albon could be considering. Yeah.
I mean, obviously the latest rumors are it's Sainz going to Mercedes, and this is the one that most people think makes the most sense, to be honest, because he's the one getting kicked out of Ferrari, and his dad, Carlos Sainz Senior, was seen chatting to Toto in Jeddah, I think.
Yeah, everyone's
Um,
been talking to Toto. That's what's mad. There are 5 different drivers' dads who have been seen with Toto.
yeah, it's just funny. It's always the dads that chat to them, and never the drivers themselves. Like
Yeah.
it's yeah.
But the funny one with Monaco is that it wasn't just Toto and Flavio. Toto brought George. And it was like, oh, yeah, so this is my son. And I think your son and my son would get along well together in my team. Because I'm just thinking about what George could have said at this table. It's just those 2 huge mega heads who are kind of like those big villains of Formula One.
Billionaires.
And then there's little George sat there being like, I would get well. I would get along with Fernando. He's my idol. That pick is so funny to me.
It's weird because it's obviously, I guess Mercedes are thinking, well, George is our long-term prospect, so maybe we should let him have some say in who he wants to race with. I don't know, but then over the winter, like Adrian Newey, he was having dinner with, wasn't it Andrea Stella or
Yeah.
Andrew Siegel, and then was like, oh, he's going to go back to McLaren or something, and that I was like, no, maybe sometimes they just talk. This is the thing that drives me nuts about silly season is that people just make things up out of nowhere. Like two figures, they'll just walk past each other in the paddock as like, oh, they're going to do something together now. Well, he's going to sign them and whatever. And it's like they are allowed, like they're not segregated. Like you can't interact at all. A lot of the drivers are friends with each other. Everyone in the paddock is very friendly. They are allowed to just have dinner and have a chat. They don't have to spill their darkest secrets about what they're cooking up in the wind tunnel or whatever, like, or the details of contracts. But the science one, it feels the most concrete. I mean, originally people, for some reason, everyone kept linking him to Audi, who were taking over Sauber, but then. But that doesn't exactly look like a very attractive prospect because Sauber are, well, less than useless at the moment. If you look at their past couple of races, it's like you may as well go for Mercedes. Mercedes have a rap sheet, or that they have a track record that Sauber doesn't have, and it's basically a move sideways because they are a little bit worse than Ferrari at the moment, but not by much.
Well, it
But
would
then
just be
everyone's like,
a
oh
driver swap in the end. It would basically be a driver swap between Lewis and Sainz.
yeah, and then
I
obviously
mean,
that's
but
the
why do
simplest way
that?
of doing it. Yeah,
Yeah, but the point is, why do that? That's the biggest question. Because if you have to go with Carlos Sainz, because look, Carlos Sainz is not a world beater. He's a strong driver, but you are not going to win titles with him. Why not just put Kimi Antonelli into that seat and just let him do what he can? Because again, look, Ollie Behrman, what Ollie showed in Jeddah is that if you have the talent and the skills, you can make it happen. And again, there are quite a few people that have been digging on Kimi for the kind of start that he's had in Formula 2, but it's been good. I think the first race he did better than Ollie, and in the second race again he's still getting used to life in Formula 2. I think the talent is still there, speed is there, and if Mercedes has to put its faith into some driver, I think go for Antonelli in that case, because that is still a long term prospect. George will win you the races, and once Antonelli is ready to take over, again they have a brilliant talent for the future. Why do something else?
I mean, also that would be the interesting thing to do, which is probably why they won't do it. Is to just throw Kimi Antonelli in. Yeah, we'd have to see with him because we're 2 races in, and it's been. I think again, we did this thing of bigging up because the people were bullshitting and claiming he was 4 seconds faster than everyone in the wet and all of that. And it's like, no, it's going to take him a few races to get into it. Although in Jeddah, in the feature race, he almost never took turn one properly. He was locking up there and cutting the corner constantly. Um, and it would be a risk, but yeah, it's not the top team. Like Red Bull wouldn't do that. If he was a Red Bull junior, they wouldn't throw him in alongside Max as a rookie into that kind of car, even if he was destroying everyone. The thing with Behrman is interesting because because obviously he went into there and he'd missed FP1 and FP2. He'd gone into that weekend thinking he was going to race in Formula 2. He'd already got himself pole position, and then he gets thrown in Formula 1 and he finishes seventh and he beats Lewis and Lando. I think it kind of points to, well, partly I don't think we need quite as much practice every weekend as they get.
Yeah.
They seem to cope with a crippling lack of testing because we have simulators now. And also, the cars look like they've never been easier to drive. 30 years ago, he would have flopped massively and probably had some huge accident. But these days, particularly now because the Formula 2 cars are ground effect cars themselves and they're the same basic type of design as the F1 cars, the adjustment is very good. And so that bodes well again for someone like Zane Maloney if he's going to be going to Sauber. That, well, the car's basically the same, just a bit more powerful and more grip. It's like, well, it's not going to be a completely new learning experience.
Well, this all makes me think, all this talk of junior drivers makes me think about what would happen, very importantly to our discussion, what would happen to the Red Bull junior team if / when Marco leaves? Would it just plummet? Would the talent just go away? Would they find someone to
I think he's
take
already
over?
been. I think right now Marco is just a token head. It's basically being handled by Rocky, Vettel's old race engineer. He's basically handling almost everything right now, and that's why they streamlined it because, again, Marco takes the final decision, but Rocky has already been taking over things and managing stuff in the background, and they have a few good drivers in the pipeline. I think they'll still be fine. Pepe Marti has been decent in the first couple of races as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did a video on the history of the Red Bull Junior team, and I was amazed. Well, first of all, that they had, because I mentioned before, over 100 drivers in the past 23 years have been members of that team. It seemed like for the first 10 years or so, they would just pick any old sod to be on there because there were so many drivers nobody's heard of. A lot of them, sometimes, some of them lasted just one race and then they got axed. And they had, I think at one point, I think they peaked, I think 2006, they added 16 new drivers to the lineup. It was only when they started getting like Ricardo, Jev, Kvyat, Brendan Hartley, those four, like late to, and then Vettel, but he moved up earlier. That was when they were like, okay, let's actually invest in a smaller number of actually good drivers rather than just picking anyone to do it. That was when they kind of got streamlined. But the main criticism people have with Marco, he's very unforgiving, but also this is something that Jack Crawford has said because he recently left the Red Bull Junior team and he's now an Aston
Yeah.
Martin Junior. He said that basically he doesn't go to the races, he doesn't pay much attention. He looks at the end result of where you finished in the championship and just takes it off that. So he won't take into account if you've had lots of mechanical failures or accidents that weren't your fault or anything that like that. And maybe it's difficult because they have even, I mean, now they still have quite a few drivers on the team in ranging from karting up to Formula 2. So it's quite a lot of people to keep track of. But he does. It's weird that he has a way. Every junior team seems to have a way of picking favourites and people that, to use the wrestling term, get a push and seem to always be at the front. And like Ferrari, like Dino Beganovic, he's been there for years and he's always been prominent, even when he was like 12 years old for some reason.
Yeah.
They did this with Yuri Vips. He was the one getting the push. He was getting testing time. He was doing FP1. He was doing all of this. Then N-word gate happens, and that all crashed and burned. And now he's hanging by a thread in IndyCar or whatever he's doing now. Yeah, there's one person that gets kind of chosen the favorite, and the others just get sort of ignored. I mean, I'm forgetting. Like Enzo, is he a Red Bull Junior still? Because
No,
Pepe,
no, 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 no. He's not.
he's
Enzo Fittipaldi is not.
because he left.
There
So
are two.
Dennis Hauger, yeah, Dennis Hauger. It's Pepe
Isaac
Hadjar.
Hadjar.
and Hadyar. Yeah,
Yeah.
and obviously, yeah, things are going swimmingly for those two. Lots of breakdowns and first lap crashes so far at the moment. Yeah, it's his we've. I think people. This is the funny thing about the whole scandal. To bring it back to Horner, is that Horner, Jossen, Helmut are probably the three most hated figures in the Formula One paddock. And it's funny seeing people trying to pick sides and who they're going to side with, which I think is why most of them have sided with this woman because that's the kind of easier one. And it's like, to be honest, the way it looks, I feel like the main victim in all of this is Jerry. If we take it at face value that Corners had an affair, because there was huge discussion. This was what, because she's a Spice Girl. This was when it kind of broke into mainstream discussion. Was her basically being seen walking through the paddock, holding hands with him, and obviously
Yeah.
standing by her man as the song goes. and she got raked over the coals for this because the narrative is, oh, well, if your man cheats on you, you're supposed to leave him. It's like, okay, well, maybe she doesn't. There are obviously lots of different reasons for doing that. We don't know. We don't know the ins and outs of their marriage. We don't
Yeah.
know what kind of agreements, concessions, or compromises they've made. I mean, maybe he is allowed to slip to for sometimes. I don't know. Maybe that's an agreement they've made. Maybe it's an open relationship. We don't know because it's their marriage and it's their own business.
Yeah. I think that, look, at the end of the day, you can't judge this entire thing by morals because no one has been following them. There's no good guy in all of this. They're actually a bunch of foolish old people who are trying to screw up a good thing. That is what it all comes down to. There's nothing. There's In all of this, Honor has been an idiot the way he fooled around. Marco, Jaws are being foolish because, look, it's almost a blunt manner in which it becomes clear that they are the ones who are waging a war against Honor. And the most important thing in all of this is Horner is not going anywhere. He has the support of the majority shareholders in Red Bull. And when that is the case, anyone who comes up against him, they are actually the one who's actually going to go. So they can continue to leak whatever they want to. I think they're done with it. There's no more evidence, nothing. Maximum what we can see is another lawsuit from the lady. That's all. But other than that, nothing else is going to happen. Horner is going to stay. Now, whether Max, Joss, Marco, they fall in line, that is what we need to see. That is the next part, at least in my view.
Yeah, I think that's a really good conclusion actually, because there's not much more we can speculate on, and we've really just we've gone about everything really that was mentioned in the chronology, in the timeline. I'm just eager to see if Max leaves, because it would be a dumb move in my mind. But
I think I'll tell you
yeah,
one very wonky scenario that might actually happen. Max leaves for 2025. He goes to Mercedes. When that happens, there's a seat open at Red Bull. Lewis ultimately tears up his contract with Ferrari, takes whatever financial hit he will. He moves to Red Bull, wins his 8th title, retires.
And then Carlos comes crawling back to Ferrari.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
and in all of this, go ahead.
I mean, to be honest, that could these days nobody obeys contracts anymore. They say, "Oh, I've got this 100-year contract with this team," and then 2 weeks later, "Oh yeah, I just bought my way out of it." It doesn't mean anything. It's like, great, okay. 20 years ago, people used to say, "Well, I hate this team, but I'm contracted with them for the next 5 years, so this is going to be just fun, isn't it?"
Oh God. Apparently, Albon has also given a very cryptic answer to this. At the start of the season, James Walls came out and said that Albon is with us for 2025. And then he was on Beyond the Grid and he said that we have an understanding between us. And he was questioned, okay, will you be with Williams in 2025? What's your contract situation? And his answer was, we have an understanding between us. So it basically means any big team comes calling, he's going. It's as clear as that.
the last really interesting thing I saw about all this is that Zhou Guanyu knew that Lewis was going to Ferrari from I think like October or November of last year, because he has a mutual agent for Lewis and for Lewis with Lewis, and some people were like, oh, maybe when they go to fashion shows together, Lewis told him, and then Joe was like, okay, I'm not going to tell anyone. No, that did not happen. Lewis did not send a DM to Joe. It is a mutual agent who maybe leaked something to the other F1 driver. They do not hang out at fashion shows together where they fully disclose their moves. That would be
I think the
extremely
funniest
weird.
I think the funniest thing in all of this is Anthony Hamilton has come out and said that Lewis did not inform his family. His family did not know. But apparently Fabio Quartararo knows, the MotoGP
Yeah,
rider. Joe Guan Yu knows,
yeah.
and almost everyone else knows, but his family did not. What's going on here?
I'm picturing like Lewis is like braiding Joe's hair and showing him how to put it in cornrows. And he's like, "Oh, by the way, I'm moving to Ferrari next year. Don't tell anyone." Lol. I'd love it if those two are actually secretly besties. Like, yeah, because they do the smash because they're through their love of fashion or whatever.
The
Um,
extravagant clothing.
Yeah, so
Maybe,
this is something.
Joe's going to Mercedes. Maybe Joe's taking the 25 seat. Who knows?
It's the thing. I mean, okay, this is off topic completely, but we discussed this, 6 weeks ago. But when Lewis went to Ferrari, and I was thinking, okay, so we spent 12 hours saying, oh, apparently it's going to get announced, and then it did get announced, and all these rumors. I was like, okay, who leaked the rumors? Because everyone knew before the announcement came, and you'd think surely somebody would have spotted Lewis in Maranello. He's not going to have signed this over Skype, like from Monaco or whatever. Like he would have been spotted in Maranello. They're like, what's he doing near Ferrari? So
Yeah.
it's weird that no one knew about this.
By the way, a hot take: this entire partnership is going to end up quite emphatically poorly for Lewis. I don't see it going well. I mean, I can see the writing on the wall already. I think Leclerc is getting better. Finally, he actually has a car with which he can consistently compete. And when Lewis comes into that team in 2025, it's not going to be pretty.
Yeah, this is the thing, and this is what I was thinking when the signing happened. Is people say, "Oh, he's going there to get his eighth title." It's like, no, he's going there to drive for Ferrari because everyone wants to drive Ferrari, even if they are useless. Because his contract is 1+1, so 1 year with the option for a second one.
2+1.
He's probably good.
Two
Is it
plus
two
one.
plus one? Oh, I
Yeah.
thought it was 1+1. I thought he's going to go there in 25 and then maybe just say, "Oh, I've done my year at Ferrari. I'm a Ferrari driver," and then just retire. And with the option of a year if he is desperate to go on for another. But it's the fact that just before this announcement, Leclerc got his multi-year deal, and I'm like, you're not going to build the team up around Leclerc and make him the team leader, which he has been for 5 years now, and then just bring Lewis in. Lewis knows that that's how the team operates. He also knows that they gave him two very easy runs, well, three very easy runs to the title in 17, 18, and 19.
Yeah.
Like this,
They've done their bit.
what is he expecting to get out of this? That because
$100
you almost
million.
could have seen him.
$100
Yeah,
million
yeah,
is what he's expecting to get out of it. Not
yeah.
not cheap.
So he can continue to wax lyrical about everyone suffering under the cost of living crisis. But yeah, um, yeah, it's a strange one.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that covers everything. I mean, we took some quite significant detours in there, looking at Formula Two and Lewis and Ferrari at the end. Yeah, the news does seem to have died down a little bit since the race almost a week ago now. Um, I'm sure more will come out, but I don't think this has gone away for the time being.
By the way, what's your prediction, Nav and Peter? What do you think is going to happen? Will the team split
Personally,
apart? Okay, I'll give you three
yeah,
scenarios. Will you have Horner stick with the team, and then Marco and Jos, sorry, Max, they fall in line? That is one scenario. Second is Horner leaves. Third is Max leaves. What do you think?
I think Horner stays. Personally, I think Horner stays because he is too important to the entire Red Bull brand. And somehow, from what I've understood, he might even be more important to the Red Bull brand than Max, which is absolutely insane. Max has won 19 of the last 20 races. I never thought that would ever happen in Formula One, but 19 of the last 20 races won by the same driver, and the team principal still seems to be a more important figurehead than the actual driver. So I think that's the option. Horner stays, and option D, Max finds a way to stay as well because he would lose too much by not staying there. That's my personal view.
So basically, sanity prevails. Peter?
Yeah, I think the most just thing that would happen would basically Helmut gets suspended or just they have him let go because he's in his 80s now. Christian stays. Jos starts turning up less and less to races and just not talking as much. That's kind of how it should be. What Team Lewis Hamilton probably wants is that Marco gets fired, Jos gets fired, Max leaves and goes to Sauber or something. Christian gets put on the sex offenders register and gets fired, and then Lewis moves into Red Bull and wins his eighth title.
With Tsunoda as his teammate.
So
Yeah,
basically, so basically, you're calling me Team LH because I said Lewis will go to Red Bull.
I mean it's just but yeah, it's a funny, but yeah, I think Christian is even if it's going to be through illicit means of using hush money and everything, he's way too powerful to get let go. even if these were fairly concrete allegations, which at the moment they're not. But it does mean that if it does go out that way, it is going to leave a stain in terms of the people, like, in terms of women in motorsport, and that it's already doing that because they've effectively silenced this woman on the allegations, and that reputation might take a long time to kind of recover from.
Heal.
Yeah.
So, okay, what's your prediction? You didn't pick one. What do you think is going to happen?
I think, yeah, the most realistic one is that basically they get rid of Marco, and maybe they just stop listening to Jos so much. I don't think
Ah,
at the end of the day, Max is going to want he's going to want a good car and a good team, and there's no reason for him to leave. I don't think he's that loyal to Helmet in particular that he would give all of that up just to please him. When there isn't even any, when it's like, okay, are you going to go with Helmet to another team? Nobody wants him. What happens? You're leaving because he leaves, but then you go to another team that also doesn't have him. It's yeah, yeah.
yeah. So yeah,
And you
in
also,
my case, I think Horner stays, Max leaves. He leaves to Mercedes with Marco as the package. Again, that's what I think is going to happen. Who replaces him? I don't know. There are rumors of Oscar Piastri, but who knows?
I think that brings this episode to a close. Thanks as ever to Nav and the Casual F1 fan. You've been listening to the DRS Train podcast. We're on YouTube and Spotify, and you can also find us on Instagram and X at the DRS Train podcast. Make sure to check in for our latest episode. Stay safe, and we'll see you all next time.